as promised, more examples. 6 and 7 have some fractions in, so we'll get into that in a second, but number 5 is similar to number 4. To solve that equation, first I'm going to have to get rid of these parentheses. Okay, so to get rid of the parentheses, I got to distribute this 2. So multiply 2 through. That's the first step on the left-hand side. Make sure you distribute it to both numbers. And then multiply the negative 4 through. Okay, so I should have, when I do that, I should have 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times negative 1, negative 2, minus 3 equals negative 4 times x, negative 4x, negative 4 times 4, negative 16. Okay? Alright, so before I start adding x's to both sides or subtracting x's from both sides, I have to first combine my like terms, right? I have this negative 2 and this negative 3 on the left hand side, so I can bring those two together. Negative 2 take away 3 is negative 5. And then I rewrite the other side. Okay. Now it looks like a problem we've done in the past. So I'm going to bring my x term to the left hand side. Again, it doesn't matter. I could subtract 4x from both sides and bring the x over to the right, but I'm going to choose to add 4x to the right side so it goes away from there. So I got to do the same over here, right? Plus 4x. So I get 8x minus 5. Whoops. 8x minus 5 equals negative 16. Okay, and then I'm going to have to do what next? I got to get rid of the 5, right? Again, a mistake would be to bring this 16 over here to say plus 16 plus 16. Don't do that, because then you have 8x, and then you have your number term, and then you have everything on one side, right? I don't want to do that. So if I brought my x to the left, I want to bring my number terms to the right. That means I want to get rid of it from the left-hand side. So I do plus 5 on that side. That gets rid of it. I got to do plus 5 over here. All right, and that leaves me with 8x equal to, be careful, negative 16 plus 5 is negative 11. Use your calculator to be sure about that. And then I divide both sides by 8 to get x all by itself, which is what I'm looking for. And my solution is right there, negative 11 over 8. Okay? Alright, number 6, my first example with fractions. And I don't want to deal with these fractions. We could follow the same process. I could subtract 2x from both sides. But I don't want to do 1/3 x minus 2x. Right? I don't want to do that. The first thing I want to do is get rid of my fractions. Okay, just clear the problem of fractions. You can always do that by multiplying by the least common denominator. Okay? If I multiply both sides by the least common denominator, I won't have fractions anymore. So what's the least common denominator between 3, 5, and 5? It's the smallest number that 3 and 5 will divide into evenly, which is 15. So I got to multiply everything by 15. That is both sides by 15. Okay, both sides by 15. So I'm going to distribute 15 times 1/3 x, 15 times 4/5, 15 times 2x, 15 times 6/5. Okay. So let's come down here and do that work. I'm just going to do this work down here, and then we'll come back and rewrite the equation. So what's 15 times 1/3? Well, it should be 5, but let's find the work here. So 15 times 1/3. Remember doing this? If you want, you can put the 15 over 1 and do this. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 15 5, and multiply across. 5 times 5 is 1. Divided by 1 times 1, which is 5, or 1 times 1, which is 1, so it's 5 over 1, or just 5. Right? So that's my x term. So 15 times 1/3 x is 5x. Okay? And then do the same thing with the 4/5. So I'm going to do 15 times 4/5, and then I'm going to pay attention to the sign later. It should be negative, right? In the end, 15 times negative 4/5 should be negative. But I'll deal with that later. I just want to know what 15 times 4/5 is. So I'm going to come down here and do the work. 15 times 4/5. Alright, put the 15 over 1 if it helps. And then I do one of these guys. 5 into 5 once. 5 into 15 3 times, and 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, and notice I don't have fractions anymore. That should always work. If you multiply a fraction by its LCD, you shouldn't have a fraction anymore. Okay, so I get 12, and then I'm going to pay attention to my signs. A positive times a negative, so that should be a negative 12. And then I go from here. Okay, now notice this isn't a fraction, but I still have to multiply it by 15, right? If you're multiplying everything else by 15, you got to multiply this by 15. So 15 times 2 is 30. That's my x term, 30x. Minus, and then I'll come back down here and do one more problem. 15 times 6/5. And 5 goes into 5 ones. 5 goes into 15 3 times. And then I do 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay? So, just like that, I've gotten rid of my fractions with one step. So now it looks like a problem that we've dealt with before, the problem that we know how to deal with. Okay, so it's not really that bad. Just one extra step, getting rid of the fractions by multiplying by the LCD. Okay, now everything else comes easy, right? Minus 30x. That gets rid of that. Subtract 30x over here. 5 minus 30 is negative 25. So I get negative 25, that's a 5, negative 25x minus 12 equals negative 18. And I'm going to add 12 to both sides. And I get that go away, negative 25x equals, remember to carry your equal sign with you every step, negative 18 plus 12 is negative 6. Okay, and now I can divide both sides by negative 25. My final step. Okay, I can't take anything into 6 and 25. There's no number that goes into those evenly. But I can, and don't leave your answer like this. You see these two negatives? Alright, this happens a lot. A negative divided by negative is always a positive. So I can reduce my answer a bit, or simplify my answer, and I get positive 6 over positive 25. Right? 6/25. So that's my answer for that one. Alright? Alright, one more. Same idea, I got fractions. Anytime I see fractions, let's get rid of them. Find the LCD. If you have trouble finding the LCD, always look at the biggest number. In this case, it's 4. And start looking at its multiples. That's 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on. Just keep going up with the largest until you find a number that 3 and 2 both go into. So that should be 12, right? I can take 12, 4 goes into 12, 2 goes into 12, 3 goes into 12. So that's the LCD. Remember, this doesn't have a denominator, so I don't have to worry about that yet. When I multiply, however, I do have to multiply that 3 by the 12. Oh, I got a typo here. Let me put that x in. That should say x. Okay, 4/3 x minus 1/2 equals 1/4 x plus 3. We decided the LCD was 12, so to multiply everything by 12. Run that 12 through. Multiply this by 12 as well. Okay, so I'm going to save a little bit of time on this. You can come down here and do the work, but I can multiply 12 times 4/3. I know what that is. 3 goes into 3 once, into 12 4 times. So I go 4 times 4, that's 16x. 4/3 times 12 is 16. 12 times 1/2, we should know what half of 12 is. Half of 12 is 6. Positive times a negative still gives me the negative. Okay, what's 1/4 of 12? If I do 12 times 1/4, that's 3. So I get 3x. And then 12 times 3 is 36. Okay, so I skipped a step there. I encourage you to do what I did over here. On the last example, I encourage you to do this. Okay, because it's not always as easy as number 7. I was able to do these in my head. Okay, but I encourage you to take the time and make sure you're multiplying right. Okay, and from this point it's fairly easy. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. 13x minus 6 equals 36. And then I will add 6 to both sides. I get 13x, that's a 3. 13x, that's gone, equals 42, and I divide by 13. Okay, and I look to reduce this if I can. I don't think that's going to reduce. Nothing I know of goes into 42 and 13 evenly. Okay, so I'm done, but you got to practice. Okay, so do a bunch of those problems and keep practicing.